In an industry driven by volume, visibility, and the constant demand to be everywhere at once, Catherine O'Hara built her career around an unusual principle: knowing when to step away. While Hollywood often rewards those who chase attention relentlessly, she chose restraint, timing, and intention instead. To many observers, her career appeared to slow dramatically after her unforgettable turns in Beetlejuice and Home Alone, creating what looked like a long absence from major blockbusters. But this wasn't a disappearance born of rejection or decline. It was a deliberate recalibration. At the height of her commercial appeal, when offers were plentiful and expectations even higher, O'Hara quietly resisted the pressure to keep climbing. She understood something that few performers are willing to admit: success can become a trap when it demands everything in return. Rather than letting her life be defined by premieres and contracts, she began shaping it around values that rarely make headlines, but endure far longer than applause, standing at the peak and choosing another path. The early 1990s were a defining moment for Catherine O'Hara. Home Alone had made her instantly recognizable to millions, and the industry was eager to position her as the next great comedic leading lady. At that time, the unspoken rule for actresses was simple and unforgiving: say yes to everything while the spotlight lasts on. Many careers were built on speed rather than sustainability, yet O'Hara hesitated, not because she doubted her talent, but because she questioned the cost. Around this period, she married production designer Bo Welch and began envisioning a life that wasn't constantly interrupted by travel, long shoots, and public exposure. The choice baffled agents and surprised peers. To outsiders, it looked like momentum slipping away. In reality, she was redefining what success meant to her personally. She wasn't rejecting her craft. She was protecting her ability to live fully outside of it. The rule that changed everything. As her family grew, Catherine O'Hara established a simple but powerful boundary that quietly reshaped her career. She decided she would not accept roles that required long separations from home or extended absences from her children. It was not a press release or a public personal rule she followed consistently. In Hollywood terms, this was almost unthinkable. Productions depend on flexibility, and many studios are unwilling to accommodate family-centered conditions. As a result, certain offers faded away. Critics misread this shift as a downturn or a loss of relevance. What they didn't see was how intentional the decision truly was. O'Hara continued working, but selectively, choosing projects that fit within her life rather than forcing her life to bend around them. This boundary didn't limit her creativity. Instead, it redirected it into spaces where she could remain present, engaged, and grounded. Finding freedom in a different medium. One of the most misunderstood chapters of Catherine O'Hara's career was her turn toward voice acting during these quieter years. To some, it appeared as though she had stepped into the background. In truth, she found a creative solution that honored both her artistry and her priorities. Voice work allowed her to inhabit rich, expressive characters without the relentless demands of on-location filming. Roles like Sally in The Nightmare Before Christmas showcased her emotional depth and musical sensitivity, proving her talent was evolving rather than fading. This work required precision, imagination, and restraint, qualities she possessed in abundance. More importantly, it allowed her to remain anchored in her daily life. She could record, create, and still return home to routines that mattered deeply to her. In an industry obsessed with visibility, she quietly demonstrated that meaningful work doesn't always need to be seen to be powerful. A partnership built away from the spotlight. Behind Catherine O'Hara's steady sense of balance was a partnership that valued privacy as much as creativity. Her marriage to Bo Welch began on the set of Beetlejuice, a film defined by spectacle and eccentricity, yet their relationship unfolded in striking contrast to that world. Welch, a production designer by trade, thrived behind the scenes and had little interest in celebrity culture. This shared preference for quiet normalcy became the foundation of their life together. Rather than turning their relationship into a public narrative, they protected it fiercely. Welch supported O'Hara's career choices without pressure or expectation, understanding that her creative energy was closely tied to emotional stability. Together, they built a home life that was intentionally separate from Hollywood's noise. In an environment where fame often dictates personal decisions, their partnership stood as a rare example of mutual respect, patience, and shared values. Redefining success through presence. For Catherine O'Hara, success was never measured solely by awards or box office numbers. During the years she stepped back from constant visibility, she invested deeply in being present for her family. She chose school events over premieres, routines over red carpets, and consistency over acclaim. These choices rarely make headlines, but they shape lives in profound ways. While many performers rely on layers of support to maintain demanding schedules, O'Hara embraced the everyday realities of parenting without outsourcing them. This period of her life wasn't an intermission, it was an active, meaningful chapter that informed her later work. The emotional intelligence and restraint she developed during these years became visible in her performances later on. She wasn't absent from her career. She was enriching it quietly, building depth that no amount of constant exposure could replicate. Return that felt earned. When Catherine O'Hara eventually returned to the center of the spotlight, it wasn't out of necessity or nostalgia. It was because the timing finally felt right. Her collaboration with Eugene Levy on Schitt's Creek marked a creative homecoming rooted in trust and shared history. Levy didn't offer her a conventional role. Instead, he gave her freedom. The character of Moira Rose became a canvas for everything O'Hara had refined over decades. Her choices were bold, precise, and fearless, from the accent to the physicality. The performance resonated not because it was loud, but because it was confident. Audiences responded to the authenticity behind the extravagance. This wasn't a comeback fueled by desperation. It was the result of patience. She returned not chasing relevance, but fully inhabiting it on her own terms. A career that followed its own clock. What makes Catherine O'Hara's journey so compelling is that it resists the traditional arc of fame. She didn't peak early and fade, she evolved deliberately. Her career demonstrates that stepping back doesn't mean stepping away forever. By refusing to operate on Hollywood's timeline, she preserved her voice, her energy, and her sense of self. When recognition arrived later in her career, it felt earned rather than overdue. She had lived fully outside the industry, gathering experiences that informed her work in ways constant exposure never could. In doing so, she challenged the notion that relevance requires relentless visibility. Her path suggests something far more radical. The longevity comes from knowing when to pause. In a culture that equates success with constant output, her restraint became a quiet form of authority. The legacy of a life well balanced. Catherine O'Hara's story isn't defined by roles she declined or years she spent out of the spotlight. It's defined by alignment. She built a life where her personal values and professional choices reinforced each other rather than competed. Her legacy lies not only in iconic characters, but in the example she set for how a creative life can be lived sustainably. She proved that it's possible to honor ambition without sacrificing connection, and to pursue excellence without losing perspective. The so-called gaps in her career are not empty spaces. They are evidence of intention. In the end, her journey reminds us that fulfillment doesn't come from being everywhere, but from being present where it matters most. Catherine o I acre r teacher o brain. Dari I N I away from success. She simply defined it for herself, and that may be her most enduring performance of all.